Yeah, sweet. Sounds good.
How about that? So yeah, how's life been for you since we last spoke? The world's taken a strange turn.
But it's gotten weird since we last saw each other. But that wasn't too long ago, really, was it? That was what a couple of weeks, maybe.
Yeah, maybe a month tops.
Yeah, I mean, as good as I can be, really. Like, yeah, it's just all been strange. So, for what a lot of people don't know is I don't do Stay Close as a full time thing. I think we briefly spoke about it when we did the podcast. So, I've got two other jobs as well as Stay Close, which I'm currently not working either. So, it's given me a lot of time to really focus on the company, and I think I've been quite lucky in the fact that I've got something like the clothing company sort of focus my attention on while I'm not working. Whereas I think a lot of people haven't got anything to focus on. So I've been quite good in terms of that. I've not been that bored yet, which is quite good.
Have you been able to get a bit creative? Are we talking new Stay Close designs?
Well, I mean, so we like to come approach it in a different way. So the printers we work with have shut, so we're not actually able to create any new like t-shirts or hoodies at the minute. But certain people that we work with who uh, have got the printing equipment or like the laser engraving equipment at their houses, we've been able to do that. So that's why we've been doing things like we released the we're doing the hip flasks we put out last night, and we've got some shot glasses coming tonight. So we've been able to work on new products just in a sort of different way. In terms of design work, yeah, we've been able to catch up on a few ideas. Like I pulled out some old design books and sort of old doodles that I sort of forgot about, and been able to sort of re-look at them and reimagine them. But I won't be able to turn them into any sort of clothing just yet, until the printers reopen. But there's definitely been things I've been able to look at and just learn to use and just work in a different way at the minute.
Yeah. Have you had to put quite a bit on pause then?
Um, yeah, sort of. I mean, we we never have like a set timeline or structure when we put stuff out. It's sort of, if we're able to put out a product, we'll put it out there and then, which I think again we spoke about in the podcast. So there's been those set dates of things that I've had to push back. But yeah, it's going to obviously push things back. Like we've had events and things cancelled in the summer or be moved. So things like that have obviously changed. But in terms of actually like our timeline, not really, but it will have like a carry on effect.
Yeah. Yeah, how about stuff like events? Like you guys are constantly at tattoo conventions, vegan festivals, things like that, and obviously all of that calendar's been postponed. So what's that kind of look like for you from a, as it had, I imagine it's had a fairly detrimental impact on the business, or are you kind of riding it out at the moment?
Um, yeah, I mean it's kind of it's unfortunate. We sort of stayed away from doing quite a few take conventions and vegan events, and then this year was the first year that we had quite a few booked up actually. 'Cause we sort of took a year out of them just because we were focusing on other things, and then this year we found we were going to have enough time in sort of June, July, August to hit up some take conventions, some music festivals, some vegan events. So we had a load booked up, and then yeah, they've either all cancelled or all been pushed back. So then you have to check up on your deposits for the events, any money you put down, the like hotels. I had loads of hotels I've had to rearrange, and then it's difficult like with the deposits to get them back, to get them moved. But that's been the only sort of like, I mean, stressful thing is sort of
Yeah.
just happening. But like I said, we don't rely on the events to keep us going. Sort of,
Mm.
if you're looking at it from a business money wise point of view. But it's definitely just, I mean, it's more just upsetting because we had a lot of good events booked up that were going to be really fun. We were looking forward to them, and then having them all change. But no, it's nothing that's going to be sort of damaging to the company. It's just going to be like a bit of money lost on deposits and stuff. But I have to just accept that. Like we're not the only people who have lost money at the minute, so
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, like,
Yeah, it'd be good to get your view on that, because like as a creative individual who moves in some very creative circles, a lot of the folks that you kind of associate with are no doubt kind of feeling some effects now, and I think that the need to support creative individuals and kind of those kind of local creatives within our communities is so key right now. As much as it's, we've got to have huge respect for if we are in a position, if we're lucky enough to be in a position to be able to support them. I'd love to get your sort of take on that kind of supporting local, supporting creative right now.
Yeah, I mean, from just going off what we've witnessed, like the support we've been shown has actually been like pretty amazing over the past couple of weeks. When this all sort of hit and the lockdown sort of happened, the orders it was almost overnight, they just stopped, and there was like a 2 week period where we just had nothing, and I sort of thought that was just how it was going to be. But I think obviously people had to assess their own situation with what was going on money wise, and then once people had worked out sort of how they were getting paid, whether they were going to be working, whether they were going to get like a mortgage or rent like sort of postponed or whatever, then people were able to look at what they had left and sort of distribute that to some sort of independent people like ourselves. Like, so the support we've been shown has been actually like quite overwhelming, because whenever we get an order, like at the minute, it sort of hits me a bit. I'm sort of thinking like, that 20 quid you just sent to me, you could have put that on like food for yourselves or for your family, and you've chosen to put it into independent business. So it's really quite every order at the minute is like, it feels like the first order we've ever had. Like every order at the minute feels incredibly. It's really quite emotional at the minute. In terms of the support, I mean, I did a couple of videos last week with a friend of mine, Bobby from Our Hollow Our Home, and a friend of mine called Becky, who's a tattoo artist, and both their industries have been massively affected by this.
Yeah.
The guys in the bands across the world, you see bands about to cancel tours and festivals, and I think people seem to forget that it's not just the band that is affected by that; it's the band, their crew, their manager, their like everything, and then like the venues that to cancel, so all of them. There's a huge ripple effect to all of this, and the same in the tattoo world. Like all of those guys are self-employed. Like for them to all their work, there's no way a tattoo artist can work from home or anything, especially in these conditions. So it's really tough for those guys. But the amount of support we've seen, like people coming together, rallying together, sort of finding ways to promote each other and support each other, it's been like pretty incredible. Like it's been really nice to see how, especially sort of the smaller independent community have come together in a way to really sort of back each other up through this.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Have you seen like almost a coming together of that community, a sort of joining forces in the sort of circles you move in?
Definitely. Like the independent community have always been really supportive. Like I've always felt really backed up. Like no one appears like competition. Like I've got a lot of friends who own like independent clothing companies, and it's never felt like we're competition. It's felt like we're there to we're just in the same game trying to support each other. And I think that goes the same with all bands. Like I don't think up and coming bands ever look at up and coming bands as competition or rivals, and you've got to try and outdo each other. There is a level of support and backing each other up, and I think at the minute that's just being shown more and more at the minute with how people are all coming together from like just from like the music industry or the tattoo industry or the clothing industry are all coming together, and we're all sort of learning how to work together, which I think was always a thing that was going on, but right now it just feels so much more relevant and important.
Yeah, 100%. I'd love to sort of, since let's moving away from the kind of current situation for a minute, because as much as it would be remiss to not talk about it, it also I think we all welcome a distraction and to talk about something else for a bit. So since we last spoke, you've launched a new range. You've got the Vixen eyeshadow ranges that have come out. I'd love to hear a little bit about where that kind of got started, the inspiration for it, how you got involved in that kind of game.
It's really cool. I mean, like we've got one. Yeah, like it's.
There you go.
So like it's something that we've never done before. And I couldn't be proud of how it turned out. Like the guys who did it with V Cosmetics, like this is all them. This is so good of them to be like, the amount of work they put into this has been awesome. Where it stemmed from really is when we spoke about the aftershave that we did,
Yeah.
which was purely just a joke. The aftershave was just a piss take to annoy one specific hunter who and it was purely to make me laugh. The aftershave was just to make me laugh. And when we put it out there and it got a really good response, and like I was like, okay, like that was kind of cool. And I just thought I'd leave it at that. But then, sort of, I wanted to take it like seriously, sort of try and do something else. And like my partner Vix, who you've obviously met, she's really good. She does like modelling and stuff, and her eye makeup is always really good. And I just thought, like, I've never really, I've seen a few people like do sort of fox inspired eyeshadow, like oranges and reds and yellows, and it always looks really good. I think that's a nice colour for eyeshadow. But I just thought I'd never seen like a palette based on those colours or based on the fox. So it just sort of felt like quite an obvious gap that no one had sort of done this before.
Yeah.
So I did research into like, you know, sort of the bigger makeup brands that I probably wouldn't support, just to see if there's anything like it, and there wasn't. I looked at the smaller independent makeup brands, and again there was just nothing. And it was purely by coincidence that on Instagram I stumbled across VE Cosmetics, because they did this sort of like dark shades, like witch inspired palette, which I got for Christmas. And then when it came in this really nice display box, and the palette itself was just really nicely like presented, and it was all vegan and independent. And I was like, wow, this company put a lot of effort and work into their stuff. I'm obviously really proud of it being small and being independent, being cruelty free, which is all sort of things that like they're things that I really value in a company. And I just messaged the VE Cosmetics Instagram page to look like this product. This is awesome. Like, this is a really nice product. What you've made here. I just want to say thank you. And we just sort of spoke back and forth and sort of said, like, do you ever want to do like an exchange, like some makeup for some clothing? We could do something like that. And I sort of pushed the idea, like, well, what if we could do like a palette? Is that like a possibility? I mean, I've got no knowledge of this, so I didn't know whether that's a massive amount of work or a really simple thing to do. And just talking to the owner, she seemed really keen for the idea. She was like, well, look, we've not done anything like that. We've never collaborated with a clothing company. Let's just riff some ideas and see what happens. And it all sort of comes from there. Like, it's just purely my naivety, just asking questions. So I was like, well, if we just do a palette of just loads of oranges and reds, would that look good? And it's just one of those things where one of my little ideas, just through the help of lots of other people, it just snowballs into a real thing, and it just turned out like better than I could have imagined. Like,
and out of interest, how complicated is it to come up with a range like that? Well, you mentioned there that you kind of were asking these naive questions of this cosmetics company.
In the podcast, like, Stay Close is built on naivety. Like, when I started this, I didn't know anything. So important to ask these questions that feel so silly, but that's how you learn. That's how you get the answers. It was fun. So we obviously looked at loads of pictures of foxes and said, right, there's obviously like reds, browns, yellows, there's blacks, silvers, and the woman who owns VE sent me over almost like dark colour swatches of all the different eyeshadow pigments that she could create or get a hold of. And we just sort of, we picked out, I think it was about 30 or 40 different shades, and then just slowly broke it down into a nice sort of 15 that we thought would work really well. I put a lot of that into up to her, because look, you're the expert in terms of what eyeshadow palettes are going to, which colours are going to work, how they're going to blend. I don't know anything about that. So sort of her and Vic sort of took control over that, and I took the sort of the more artworky side of things. Like, I was doing the things I was good at, and I was letting her do the things that she was good at, and it was just a really fun back and forth. like it's just another thing that I've, just another learning curve that I can now claim I know a little bit about makeup.
Just yeah, another creative outlet. I'm intrigued as to the packaging because again, it's another awesome example of your creative design work. So I don't know if we can have a little look at it over.
Yeah.
Look at that, that's awesome. So is that a
So,
piece of artwork you made bespoke for the range?
yeah, so the artwork actually, and I have to give like 100% the credit, is a friend of mine called Matt. Matt owns a company called Death Cult Clothing. He's a freelance artist. He does a lot of like band artwork and stuff. And when I was thinking about the sort of the artwork for the palette, I knew it had to be colourful. Like it's an eyeshadow palette. Obviously, the stuff that Stay Close does, 90% of it is a lot of black and grey.
Mm.
And I just work. I've worked with Matt before on a few full colour designs, and I just knew that if I just left it up to him, but if I let him just run with it, with a few sort of ideas for myself, I knew he would come out with exactly what I saw in my head, if that makes sense.
Right.
I just sort of let Matt run with it. Like I knew I had to have the idea of like really close up to the fox's face, like with really like piercing eyes, and yeah, like what he come out with again is just
stunning.
Everything I saw in my head. And then yeah, the actual packaging itself is it's just done really well. Like it looks so good. Like I just keep sitting and looking at it like that's crazy how good that.
Yeah, and such a new angle for you, right? It's a new avenue.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's like again, at the risk of going into something we spoke about, it again sort of feels like jumping on another bandwagon. Like a lot of people are moving into sort of the cruelty-free makeup, which is awesome because the testing of animals for makeup is such a savage industry. Like I learned a lot about like vivisection a couple of years ago, which involves things like animal testing for makeup brands, and it's some of the most vicious stuff I've ever seen. And I think that a lot of people are switching on to that. So a lot of people are moving towards vegan makeup and cruelty-free makeup, which I think is brilliant. Obviously, we're known for sort of the animal, like cruelty-free stuff. But it just sort of felt like something that it would, even though it was something completely different to Stay Close to do, it didn't feel too far away from sort of our actual ideas, even though it's a completely different product. It still connects to everything we believe in, everything we push. It's not like I've just sort of found something that will make quick money and go, oh yeah, right, we can jump on that. It's still linked to everything we fully believe in, but it's definitely different. But then the aftershave is different, and yeah, like it's fun.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like as we've seen over the last few years, the rise in sort of plant-based, and I use that particular term like deliberately. I think as we've seen that kind of rise, I think people kind of like try and use that term interchangeably with veganism, and I think it's critical that through, whether it be through your aftershave, through the eyeshadow range, you're starting to point that out to people. The two things are very different. Veganism is about every aspect of life. It's not just a diet. It's not a diet. Let's put it that way.
And I think going back to what we were saying about bringing sort of people together and supporting each other. What's cool is the perfume we made was with an independent vegan perfume brand from Brighton, and then this is with an independent vegan makeup company, and it's just sort of bringing different people from the independent world together, and just creating stuff that we wouldn't normally have created. Like I wouldn't have been able to do this without VE, and the same with with Eden and the perfume, and it's sort of similar to sort of, I imagine maybe they wouldn't have ever made a palette like this if it wasn't for us coming towards them, and the same with Eden wouldn't have done a fox scented inspired aftershave if it wasn't for us coming towards them. So it's just cool, like connecting with these people and sort of just bouncing ideas off each other and just coming up with new things that wouldn't have existed if we didn't look at collaborating. I still think that's why like collaborating with people is so important, because you come out with something that you wouldn't have been able to make just on your own. The same with the artwork, like working with Matt, like we wouldn't have had this incredible piece of artwork for the palette wouldn't have existed if if I wasn't the type of person who enjoyed collaborating and sort of letting people just sort of run their ideas into stuff and just having it all intertwined, I think you're always going to come up with a better idea or a better product if you just let other people sort of rip ideas into it.
Yeah, 100%. Sort of, it reminds me of a subject we got onto in the podcast actually. And it'd be good to kind of go back into that subject a little bit. 'Cause I'm particularly kind of, I love the work you've done with hunt sab organisations throughout the UK, and the idea of kind of making your creation, your artwork publicly available. I'd love to sort of just go back into that, if that's all right, just on this sort of platform, and just talk about, what inspired that for you, because there's a lot of creators out there who, for this is their livelihood, who wouldn't have made that decision. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the kind of the reasoning behind that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think something that I've seen recently is I've seen quite a lot of tattoo artists at the minute putting their designs up for free, just blank, so people can colour them in. Sort of similar to what we did with a few of our designs. And for us, it's not a huge thing. For someone like a tattoo artist, like you say, their artwork is their income. So to see a lot of tattoo artists putting a lot of their designs up for free to download, I think it's a really incredible and quite a brave thing to do. Like once that design's out there, it's out there. You can't then try and claim it back. So I think it's a really cool thing seeing the tattoo artists sort of do that. In terms of what we do, it's like I said on the podcast. I think it's always going to be the main thing is Stay Close has become bigger than it ever should have been. Like it not that I'm not happy it's not got to this level, but this was never the intention. It was just for fun. And we've done more than I thought we'd ever do, even today. Like the eyeshadow palette, I never thought we'd do an eyeshadow palette. But again, in terms of like giving the artwork away, is if the company itself was to end, I mean, if Stay Close was my full-time job while this had happened, then Stay Close wouldn't survive this. If this was having to pay my wage, pay my rent, pay my food, by the end of this quarantine, Stay Close probably wouldn't be a company. So again, I'm very fortunate that I happen to work two other jobs that are my income to allow Stay Close just to still exist. So I know that it sort of exists. It sort of can't finish because it's not. It's so hard for me to try and work it out, mate, and try and word it. But like I said in the podcast, like if the actual physical thing of Stay Close ends, if I stop producing t-shirts and picking, packing and shipping t-shirts and going to festivals, the artwork's still there. The artwork can still be used. So why not do that now? Why not send it out to people now? If there's other people that can use the artwork in a bigger, better way to do something good, then I don't see why I'd wait till this ends for them to do that. Why not do it while this is still going? I think it's a really fun thing. Again, so if I have all these designs, and I thought like this design looks good on a t-shirt or this design looks good on a hoodie. If I give it to another organisation, they might be able to use it in a way that I've never thought of, and come up with something that's 10 times better than what I've used it for. And I think when you've got artwork, and if you're like me and you're happy for people to take it and use it, you'll find that it can, there's probably 100 different ways that all this artwork can be used. I only see it from one point of view. So I don't think I don't consider it like a loss. Like I don't feel like people are going to make loads of money off my designs and this is a silly business. It's sort of like what we said. Like, I don't feel like this is no one else has probably ever done it. But it doesn't mean it's not a bad thing or will cause loads of damage to your company. I just think like if I can give these designs out and the hunt sells make loads of money and keep them in the field, that's more important than me making some money on the side while I've got two other jobs. You know what I mean? Like I still don't get paid from Stay Close. Like I don't take any money. We don't have any employees. It's nothing like that. All the money that Stay Close makes goes back into Stay Close. So it's not like I have to sell products. It's sort of like I said to you, like selling t-shirts to make money is like the second or third or fourth priority to what we do. Like promoting the things that I think are good in the world, like animal welfare, that's the number one priority. And if the way I can help promote that is offer the artwork out for free to people who can who can make products and help fund what they're doing, I don't see why I wouldn't do that. Like it sort of makes Stay Close bigger than just one person or just one company. It allows it to spread into loads of other organisations, and just it will mean that it will constantly it will always exist, even if I have to shut down what I'm doing. If that makes sense.
Do you kind of see that as because the way you talk about that, and I'm fascinated by that point, is obviously like at the core, the business um, is about your passion for animal welfare and is about stopping um, speciesism and the violent ends that happen to kind of our wildlife across the country and beyond. And that's at its kind of core. That's the principle by which you sort of you founded the business. But there's also this point around creativity there, and it's sort of comes up again. It came up in the eyeshadow point and the aftershave point, and it comes up in the hunt sabs bit, that you're also just, sounds to me, just as intrigued to let somebody else loose with your design, with your artwork, as you are kind of to kind of perpetuate your kind of belief system. And I kind of love that point. It's almost like creativity isn't something that should be kind of owned almost. Would you say that's kind of fair? And would you like to see Stay Close kind of become almost no longer yours, if that makes sense? Like it become the property of many people?
Yeah, and like it's like I say, I've always thought Stay Close is bigger than just me or just the people who run it or whatever. It's turned into so much more than that. And in terms of, I mean, yeah, you're definitely right. I love the idea of letting people take the artwork and do what they want with it, because beforehand, when this was just a bit of fun and there was no opinions in the designs. It was just things that I thought looked cool on t-shirts. What I learned over time was, just because I think something looks good, it doesn't mean that's the best way it can look, or everyone else will think it looks good. And so I've sort of learned over time that it's better to take other people's opinions into consideration when it comes to things like artwork, because you can view it in one way, and 10 people can view it 10 other ways. So, like I say, if I was to just keep the artwork and just do the designs and the products how I view them, there's multiple other ways that this can be used that won't ever exist. So it's more interesting to let people to take the artwork and use it in their own way and just see what they come out with. And it's just more interesting. It allows artwork to be free. Which again is, I understand that's different to how a tattooist may view it, because a tattooist artwork, like we say, is their income. It'd be harder for them to do something similar. But I'm in a different situation, like maybe a more fortunate situation, where I am able to allow the artwork to be a bit more free. And again, like I say, if I'm in that position, why wouldn't I do that? It would just seem almost like selfish to keep it just for myself and say this can only be done my way. Because that isn't what I want Stay Close to be. I do want it to be everybody's, and I think over time it will sort of, it feels like it's going to turn more into this like weird entity of an idea of a company as opposed to a company. I think that'd be really cool. If anything, it'll be something new and a bit different. And like I said in the podcast, like anyone who knows business will look at what I'm doing and say you're doing everything wrong. Like everything we do wrong in the eyes of business, but we're still here. Do you know what I mean? We're still going. So whatever we're doing, if we're doing it wrong, it's working. So I'm going to keep trying to do things different until it doesn't work. And then if it doesn't work, and if this ends, it will still be continuing elsewhere, because I've already put those sort of wheels in motion to allow other people to take it and continue it.
Yeah. And where do you kind of see it going next? Because I think you've already expanded into territories that even if you'd asked me when we recorded our podcast, I probably wouldn't have suspected you'd have got into. Like we've just talked about, eyeshadow and some of the other projects you're getting involved in. almost through out of necessity through the lockdown, like what still can be produced, which I think is pretty awesome. Is there kind of other ideas in your mind creatively, and particularly are there other causes that you'd like to get into, or are you still very much centered around the Hunt Sabs, the Sea Shepherd movements? Is there other avenues you want to explore?
Well, I mean, it's so difficult. I think we sort of touched on it in the podcast, but didn't delve into it. It's when you start looking into things like animal abuse, it's such a rabbit hole, and the more you see, it's the point of once you see it, you can't unsee it. So you look into things like the factory farming, and that shocks you. And you look into the overfishing and the trawling of the oceans, and that shocks you. And then you go down the routes of things like, yeah, like dog fighting and bullfighting and fox hunting, and then there's just so many different avenues of abuse you can look down. And being the sort of, if you're a person like myself or yourself, it's sort of, because it does affect you and does upset you, you sort of want to try and do something to change it. And it's the really horrible thing of just, you have to try and pick your battles, and you, as much as we'd all want to, you won't be able to put 100% into something if you're trying to fight 200 different battles at once, which is something that I really struggle to get to understand my own concept. I mean, we briefly spoke about vivisection. Like I was a part of a rally in Oxford. I think it was about 2 years ago for vivisection. I didn't know a lot about it, and it was one of the most shocking days of my life. Like learning what goes on in some of these animal testing labs, even at Oxford University, which is 25 minutes from my house. Like that, like I come away from that really sort of devastated and thinking like, right, I now need to try and end vivisection. And I was sort of there juggling like, right, can I end vivisection, and then can I also end fox hunting? Can I stop like whaling and overfishing? And you sort of, it makes you feel helpless a little bit, because you sort of sat there going, you try to juggle so many things, you end up thinking you can't change anything. That was sort of where I was at, just thinking like, well, I can't, how can I fix this and this and this and this? And it's a really hard thing picking your battles. Obviously, like just because of my, my personal opinions, my main thing will always be fox hunting. I think everyone's going to have their one cause that just because it connects with you in a certain way, that's the one you're going to go after. So for me, it will always be fox hunting. I don't think I'm never going to stop working at that. But stay close aside or what? Like, I'll never stop working at that. Obviously, the work with Sea Shepherd is incredibly important. I don't know. I mean, I suppose there'd be loads of things I'd like to try and change, and I suppose it's just finding sort of. I suppose it's like finding the right time. And again, that sounds really bad, but if it's a really tricky one. I think I just have to sort of play it as it comes almost. And if I happen to fall into a place where, right, I found a group of people who maybe, work against vivisection or work against this sort of area of animal abuse, and maybe at that point I'll find a way, right, okay, I've got an idea of how I can actually help you guys, as opposed to standing there saying I want to help. If I'm able to sit back and think of an idea, then I can put it forward to them. And I suppose at the minute, what I'm doing, sort of like with all the hunt clubs across the country, obviously I can't go out to every county of the country every Saturday and sab every single hunt, but I can help every single hunt sab group in one go by giving them my artwork. So if I can find a way to sort of attack these different avenues differently, then I think I will be able to approach more things I want to be a part of. I just won't be able to be directly a part of them because I have to keep my battles, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, makes perfect sense. And yeah, I think there is a tendency, isn't there, when you become passionate and you start to see things, like you say, you can't unsee them, and the nature of the way media works these days, and we click on one thing, we find another 10, we do one piece of research, and it leads to a whole rabbit hole of other information, and before you know it, you can become almost overwhelmed with it, and I think you're right insofar as you kind of have to pick your battles, and see where you can add value to those different causes, and sort of offer your services when you've got something to offer. So yeah, I'm fully with you on that. An area we didn't actually talk about last time we spoke on the podcast, we obviously talked about the inception of Stay Close, and I imagine that they're pretty much intertwined, but I never explored with you the sort of the specific differences with the kind of Fuck the Hunt brand and the sort of sister company angle. And I'd love to get into that a little bit, like where that sort of came from and what the differentiators are, if you like, between the two.
Well, so I mean, because the Fuck the Hunt page started just so it was back when it was sort of during the sort of my, I don't know what you call it, like transition from just being a vegetarian into vegan, just thinking like that was enough. But then I was getting more into, by that point I was talking to some hunt sabs, so I was far more aware of the ins and outs of fox hunting, and going alongside that I was looking more into like the slaughterhouse footage, and it just sort of it all bottled down to one moment, and it was just out of pure just sort of anger out of all these new things I'd learned, just building up. And then one day I was like, right, I need to try and do something. And at that point, yeah, I wasn't a sea shepherd, I wasn't a hunt sab, so I didn't know what I could do. I knew I had this little clothing company, I knew I had a little bit of a platform and a little bit of a following. But again, I understood sort of like what we spoke about is the idea that Stay Close was completely unopinionated to begin with, so it didn't matter who you were. If you liked the designs, you'd like the clothing. It's simple as that. The second you start pushing your opinion into something, if people don't have the same opinion as you, they're not going to connect with what you're doing, and you'll lose your following straight away. So to begin with, because I sort of understood that, I was trying. The idea was to try and keep the unopinionated clothing to one side, and then form a sort of like a sister company on the other side to push all the opinions down, which sort of worked for like 4 minutes, because like it was. So once I started pushing the opinions into the more sort of the Fuck the Hunt side of the company, the unopinionated stuff didn't. it had to take a back seat. It didn't matter. Like clothing with just pretty patterns on it wasn't important anymore. It was the clothing with the animals that was linked to animal sanctuaries and was linked to the hunt sab and then sea shepherd. So it was. The idea was just to sort of try and keep them separate, so I didn't sort of push anyone away who just wanted to follow Stay Close just because they liked the unopinionated clothing. I didn't sort of want to attack these people for their beliefs. I didn't even know their beliefs. The people who followed us, I didn't know their opinions on these things. I'd obviously never asked them. But I knew that once I started pushing certain agendas, it would push people away. And sort of like what we spoke about, when I eventually did just change Stay Close completely into this fully opinionated thing, I was like, right, we're pushing this, this, and this. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, like we did lose a lot of our following, like which I knew would happen, and I was okay with. Like it was okay for those people not to want to follow us. They didn't ask to have opinions put into them, so I wasn't shocked that they left. So it was, the idea was just to sort of try and keep the two avenues separate, but it was never going to work. But by that point, the Fuck the Hunt range had got its own following. The Instagram page had got its own following. I didn't see the point in sort of deleting the second Instagram page. But I mean, the Stay Close and Fuck the Hunt are one and the same. They are the same thing. I mean, the content on both pages is pretty much exactly the same. They both link you to the same website. It was again. I think it was just not naivety, but it was just me trying to sort of ease in my opinions into the company. But by that point, I'd seen too much, I'd learned too much, and I was just too angry. I'm not holding back with this. This is what I'm pushing now. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. Like I knew I didn't want to change. I didn't want to end Stay Close and have the company be called Fuck the Hunt. I knew that wouldn't quite work. I knew Stay Close was a good base, a good name, a good starting point. I just had to ease in this new idea, and having the brash Instagram page did grab a lot of people's attentions. And when we started putting designs out that said like "fuck the hunt," it's quite a bold statement, so that did grab a lot of people in. But I always wanted to keep it Stay Close Clothing, because it was still my thing. You know, that's how it started. I didn't want to just throw that away, even though I wanted to change it and not start again, I think. And that's where Fuck the Hunt came from. It was just that sort of transitioning phase from unopinionated company to opinionated company.
Yeah, makes sense. Your roots and the company's roots were in kind of band merchandise as a real crossover with kind of the music scene, and I'm sort of intrigued as to when the company and when you kind of became dead set on the business being quite an opinionated one. And you've said before, you know, when we talked in the podcast, you were really open about, you know, I was quite comfortable with losing 2/3 of the audience, knowing that the third that I had were aligned with my beliefs. You know, those felt like hard-earned ethical pounds, if you like. Did you find that there was a similar trend with the bands that you were merchandising for? Did you lose some there as well, or were they kind of all quite like-minded in the first place?
No, I mean, no. In terms of the bands that I was sort of, so because we've done sort of, we did maybe 2 years of doing music festivals as Stay Close when it was unopinionated, just because of the connections that me and Grant, who co-owned Stay Close, and just through the connections we had through being in bands, we were able to go and trade at these music festivals. And yeah, we got to know different bands. Like we did a number of projects with a number of bands when we were unopinionated. But I think in terms of the bands we were close with or working with, like being in bands, most people in bands are obviously creative types, and most of them are open-minded. So none of them were, and obviously we'd spoken and we got to know each other on a personal level. So these people knew me and knew I had these opinions, you know, from the get-go. They just weren't being pushed into the clothing company or into the designs. So it wasn't a huge shock for people who actually knew me on a personal basis, which a lot of the bands and people in the music industry did. It was more a shock to the people online who had no idea, you know, the person behind the company sort of thing. And then, yeah, in terms of the losing, yeah, we did lose like 75% of our following. And, you know, you look at all the people, the stats, the people who visit your website, you know, that dropped massively. But again, it was like what I said to you, like if somebody supports things like fox hunting, I don't want your money. I don't want you to wear my clothing. I don't need your business. I'd rather you not buy my stuff. So if I had to lose 75% of people and almost start again and build up a following of like-minded people, then I was happy to do that. Like that was more important than keeping the 100% following and selling loads of t-shirts and making loads of money. I wanted to know that our following is the right kind of, not when I say the right kind of people, that doesn't mean anything. It just means sort of like I wanted our following to be like-minded people. And yeah, if people support any sort of animal abuse, I don't want your support. Like I don't need it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just sort of, I guess we've raced away with time already. Look at that. It's flown by again. So, if folks wanted to get hold of the Vixen range, any of the new products, where would you go about doing that?
So it's cool. So with the eyeshadow palette, what we're doing is we've split it. So staycloseclothing.com has got the Vixen palette, and ve-cosmetics.com has got the palettes as well. So what we've done is we've just split the cost of producing them. We both take half of the amount that we've got, and then we both take a cut, and £6 from each palette goes to the Bed and Bucks Hunt Slabs, which is my Hunt Slab group, which is really cool.
Amazing.
So yeah, you can get them from either web. Yeah, so again, it's that idea of, you know, sending people to both shops. So people who've been following Stay Close, they'll now see this new eyeshadow palette. They'll now discover this new vegan makeup brand. People who follow VE, who support vegan makeup, they will now get to see this new vegan for plant-based clothing companies. So it's the idea of just sort of sending each other followers to each other's, and I think right now that's really important. But yeah, so both companies can get the eyeshadow palette currently.
Awesome. And you'd be supporting Hunt Sabs whilst you're buying them.
Yeah, which is awesome. Good.
It is awesome. It is indeed. So I think the rest of I think it's worth for anyone who's viewing this either live or later. For anyone who would like to know a bit more about Stay Close Clothing, we did a fairly comprehensive podcast not that long ago. So do check it out. It's wherever you can, wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it. Wherever you get podcasts, it's there. And it's been quite popular so far, actually. People have, I don't know about you, Harky, whether you've had some good feedback on it, but people seem to have liked it.
Yeah, we've had quite a few people message and comment saying they enjoyed it, and which is really nice. Like I think people, especially when they follow a company that they connect to, you know, I think people enjoy like sort of getting the backstory behind it and learning more about the company. I certainly do. Like when I companies I follow or bands that I follow, it's nice getting a bit of the behind the scenes things. I think things like podcasts and sort of these live videos are really interesting for people to see the ins and outs. And for me, I especially like it because right now, like we say, because we're not going to the vegan events, the music festivals, like I'm not going to be able to connect with people, and that's one of my favourite things to do is connecting with people. So things like these live videos are really nice for people to jump on and ask questions and just have that level of connection, and for them to get to know sort of the people behind the things they follow and support.
100%. And hopefully, if all of this subsides and we get back to some degree of normality, we'll see each other again at Reading Vegan Festival, which is coming up in September. So hopefully, if we're out of this by then, we're going to be doing a sort of live interview together. So that would be awesome. And I think we'll go back into the roots of the Stay Close and the whole company. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Delve a bit further.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cheers, buddy. Thank you for your time. Stay safe, won't you? And it's you cut out there, but it's been a pleasure chatting to you.
Very much, and yeah, cool. It's been good, man. So stay safe, and we'll hopefully.
Cheers, mate. We'll hopefully have this out as a bonus episode soon. So speak to you soon.
Mate, thank you.
Cheers, mate.